All right. Um, um, I've got a few things moving forward in the whole solar microgrid setup, whatever you want to call it. So this grid originally was started back when I was living in Mississippi as just a little experiment to play around with, and I was having a lot of power problems with all of the tornadoes and stuff coming through, and I desperately needed to make sure I had power so I could continue to work throughout the day. Um, because I have been working at home for years. This latest pandemic thing is nothing new uh, in terms of how I work. But power is a very big issue for me. And just about every device I have that I need for work actually runs on a battery backup, but that only lasts so long. So solar was the way around that. And it was a fun little experiment because I am a technical, geeky kind of guy. I like to program. Uh, this is a dashboard that I made to kind of like play around with these solar charge controllers I got. The ones I have are ACOPOWER, but they look like they've rebranded EP-Ever EV tracers. When I when I run through the modbus API, I'll actually get information about those. So if I go and all of this code is actually on GitHub right now. So if you go to the bottom, you see this Lewis Moten / solar log. This is my GitHub repository for this. So here's charge controller, which is all the graphs and stuff, and then Modbus is what I'm going to show you right now. And so you see the company says EP Solar Tech, and the product is a Tracer 4210A. Yeah, this is actually a 40 amp charge controller. It's not a 10 amp charge controller, and mine's ACOPOWER, not EP Solar. And it's not the EV Tracer. It's the what do you call it? I think it's like a MPPT 40-Y or something like that. So it looks like they've rebranded whatever was in there and didn't rebrand everything. So I found that was quite interesting when I found this out. So this is actually the Raspberry Pi is actually communicating with that device and reporting this back to me of what it's getting from it. Um, this is just my actually this is like my third attempt of just like, hey, can I get all the values? What do the values mean? What are the optional values? I was even like playing around with like, what if I could just make this something I could interface with manually? I could search there, force the load. So I could search for all kinds of values. This is the actual data that I get. This is what it represents. So a lot of fun stuff playing around here. But yeah, this isn't really what we need to see. What I want to talk about really is these graphs, and I'm just going to give a general overview of what's going on. Um, so there was more that I want to do here. This is showing a graph over time of a full day. So there's the voltage of the battery. There's the state of charge that the controller thinks the battery is at the moment. And then there's the amps and watts being supplied to the battery throughout the day that the controller itself is sending to the battery. Um, this doesn't take account any of the other charge controllers sending their power. However, when they send their power to the battery and raise the battery's voltage, this guy does see the voltage go up, and he's thinking the state of charge must be going up since there isn't really any load on his end, and it's going up on its own without him helping. So there's a little bit of uncertainty there with how these charge controllers affect each other's readings. I've got all the different settings here on the right just to show me like different voltage levels, what they mean, and then what is the battery's current voltage within that list, just to give me a visual indication of, hey, the battery's, it's not in that under warning state, but it's getting close to it. uh, yeah. What I would like to do eventually, and this was like planned long ago, is like have pictures of the panels that I capture like once a minute or maybe once every 5 minutes. Just give me an understanding of like, hey, was there a shadow? Why is this acting weird? There's also concerns about why these points here go down to almost zero. I know that's actually not happening, but the reading is happening, and I think maybe the MPPT PowerPoint charge thing is kind of like scanning to figure out what the battery voltage is before it applies more amps. So there should probably be some more logic that I incorporate into this before I actually record that as the actual amps being supplied to the battery. But for the most part, you can actually see it's going up and down over the day. The load. So this isn't the load on the battery per se, but it is the load that the charge controller is providing. So I have a few devices hooked up directly to the charge controller's 12 volt output, and that's what you're seeing here in terms of what's actually being reported. So I don't really use that many that many amps or watts. You can see right now there is a kind of like a heavy load at 7 watts, and what that is, every day the battery that there's a smaller battery that the Raspberry Pi is hooked into as a backup solution, and that battery loads itself or it recharges itself fully like once a day. And then these little pings is also that same battery just trying to top itself off. It doesn't use much of the battery that often, but the battery keeps continuing to keep itself fully maintained. So it's an interesting thing when I first saw this happen, but I needed that battery because when the battery goes below a certain threshold, the low disconnect. This will prevent all device. It will cut off power to all devices that were being powered by that charge controller, including the Raspberry Pi. So that Raspberry Pi needed that backup battery so it could still communicate with the charge controller and monitor what's going on over time. I even have the status page so you can see, okay, it's been undervolt this morning until 8:30, I guess, or 8:36 a.m. Okay, I see that. And what that means is that the sun was coming up, and then it came out. It went okay. There's a bug here. You notice this isn't going away. So I don't know why it happens, but I've seen it many times before. It doesn't make sense. And I'm refreshing the page. I'm showing you one of my worst annoyances here is just waiting for data to come through. I think it's pretty much I'm providing too much data for it to actually query the databases. I don't know if I have to set up like an index or something. Maybe help speed that up. And look at that, it's got data, but it's not fully wide yet, so it's still thinking. So yeah, these are the pain points. But I think we have enough to actually start showing things again. So we have it's boost charging, yes, charging boost. One of the things is I'm going to have 3 solar charge controllers once this other one arrives. From what I understand, you should only have one of those charge controllers have a equalization mode when you have more than one, just because they don't talk to each other and you don't want to be equalizing your batteries 3 times a month. Showing the output power is fairly light. So this guy does, it's 8 watts. He can discharge up to 40 amps. So, if we're only not even at 1 amp, that's not an issue. I have a security camera running off of this thing, as well as a temperature sensor as well. Yeah. Now, it does not monitor loads on the battery directly. And by that I mean I have an inverter that connects to that battery, and it'll kick on during the daytime. And the only thing that the monitor recognizes is that the battery voltage will drop. That's all it sees. Statistics. So you can see I started on this back in that can't be right. November 6, 2020. No, this data should go back further than that. But this is just showing you like the min-max value of voltage for each day. And you can see like sometimes it just drops really bad and recovers, and then drops really bad for a long time, recovers. I think those are times where I've actually had charged my city card to the point that the batteries are almost fully depleted, and it would take like a week or so for this thing to recover. And that was on the old Harbor Freight panels. I have since upgraded to the I got that second charge controller with 500 watts, which really helped recovery. It's still not enough though. Now you see a lot of squigglies lately because now I'm running the Bitcoin miner with an inverter now, only when there's a certain voltage. Otherwise, there's an automatic transfer switch that actually runs it on grid power for the remaining time, which is the main reason why I'm getting back really heavy into solar stuff, because I need to make sure I can get more power to feed this thing and reduce the independence on the grid. And I also have the thought that, hey, I can do some stuff now, but I really need to get serious about really learning how to make a bigger system that can support that thing 24/7. And I think the next step after I do that is actually talking to somebody into actually putting solar panels on my house, and just get out of the experimentation phase and just go full throttle and invest in this stuff. But I would like to really have a really good handle on what it is that I'm dealing with, like being able to pick out some of the equipment, because I do like to play with data. If there's some kind of API I can call to communicate with equipment, log circuits with amperage usage and whatnot, I love data. Here we are with the power generate each day, and this is again just that one charge controller. So I would like to see all charge controllers represented here. I would like to be able to like filter, okay, what did charge controller 1 do? What did 2 do? What did 3 do? What did they all do combined? And then the consumed is just whatever's hooked up to that output on the charge controller. It is able to record that. And then you can see down here is the thing I like to see the most, is how many kilowatts were generated by the sun. And the issue again is this was at most 200 watts of the Harbor Freight panels, and there isn't much. The highest point looks like 5.5 kilowatts in a month. That number is actually higher now with the other kit. It's just not represented. So that's the big thing. I want to see more representation of here of what's going on. Temperatures. There are 4 temperature sensors here, but in reality there's only 2. There's the device itself for the heat sink or whatnot, and then there's the remote battery sensor. I think the protocol just says, hey, you could have multiple sensors. I just don't. It seems like these top 2 numbers are always the same. The bottom 2 numbers are always the same, or very close to each other, like 82,796 and 814. They're very close to each other, but not the same. They get drastically out of sync when there's an AC current going on. Like when the inverter turns on or starts getting a big load, I think the EMF from the fan spinning affects the equipment being able to sense the temperature. Especially, it's just the temperature probe that gets affected. You'll see a fuzziness on that thing, just on the red line. So I think that probe is more sensitive to the EMF fields than the equipment. But the equipment is set back further from the inverter. Nothing under power, settings, or information. But the thought was the information would actually list things like the serial number, the manufacturer, and whatnot. Settings would be stuff I could change myself through the web interface. Power, I'm trying to think what that would have been. I've totally forgotten by this point in time. And this up here originally was a date range or date picker or something like that. So I think there's actually, like, the old interface might have it. Let's see. Alright, so here's the old interface, and here's our date range. You can see it's back from 2017. So apparently I was playing with this back in February of that time. So it is almost coming up upon 4 years since I've been playing with the Harbor Freight panels, I guess, since, well, it's 4.5 years. Let's just say that. But I had a whole grid of everything going on here. Energy, amps, watts, volts, battery. Yeah, I could affect. Yeah, this is a cool thing. I could just like choose date ranges and stuff. Float charge, raising charge. Yeah, there was such all this cool stuff I was looking at. Yeah, Mississippi is hot in the winter. 82 degrees. Here's all of our statuses going on. And all the data. And the issue right here was I was working with raw data from this log control. So here, all I could do is get the CSV data. I couldn't talk to it real time. So I'd have to keep downloading these files all the time and then reading those. I think I was actually reading it through JavaScript. So now I just use modbus and communicate directly with the thing. Alright, other things I wanted to do is throw in weather to kind of help me diagnose why certain days were better than others, and add some kind of camera snapshot feature since the Raspberry Pi can be hooked up to a camera, and I wanted to just see shadows and stuff. Yeah, but other than that, that's just a general overview of what I see right now and the ideas I have moving forward. So, yeah, if you're interested in this stuff, here you go. Lewis Moten Solar Log over on GitHub. So check it out. Bye.